All right, so members, we are going to take up House File 4252, and we will start with amendments to the bill and then close with final discussion and vote on the bill as amended. So Chair Wolgamott, will you move your bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House File 4252 be sent to the Ways and Means Committee.
Thank you. Members, we have before us House File 4252. Chair Wolgamott has a DE labeled DE2 in your packets. Would you care to move the DE, Chair Wolgamott?
Madam Chair, I move that the DE2 amendment be adopted.
Thank you, Chair Wolgamott. And now members will have the nonpartisan staff walk us through the elements of the bill, the DE. We'll do the DE, yes.
Madam Chair and members, Nathan Hopkins from House Research. The bulk of the DE amendment consists of House File 4252 as introduced and as amended by the A1 and A2 amendments that were previously posted and heard by this committee. Those were all Office of Higher Education agency items. So the majority of this bill contains technical terminological corrections to higher ed statutes. It consolidates OHE's reporting requirements on various programs. It updates and aligns the state's two main registration and licensing statutes for post-secondary institutions, largely in response to the Armstrong Equine Massage District Court ruling. It also updates some outdated administrative language for a few programs, and at page 6 of the DE2, section 10 contains a new anti-fraud provision. Those are all items that the committee has previously seen. The new items, as a result of negotiations between the co-chairs, are the following. On page 1 of the DE, a new section created regarding developmental courses. This is derived from House File 4608, which the committee heard on April 9th. That was Representative Koznick's bill. This requires public post-secondary institutions to provide an explanation of the difference between developmental courses and credit earning courses to a student prior to their enrollment in a developmental education course. And it also requires them to sign a written acknowledgement that they received that explanation. The other new items are towards the end of the DE2, beginning on page 40 and moving on to page 41. These are changes to the 2025 Higher Education Budget Act. Section 63 contains a change to the rider for the state grant program. Last year, the legislature imposed a temporary cap on the tuition and recognized tuition and fees for the program for four-year programs only. So this revises that cap and sets it at either the lesser of the average tuition and fees charged by the institution or, and this is the new language, an amount equal to the average tuition and fees charged at all public universities in the state. The next new item, on section 64, this just updates a total appropriation for Min-State. It's related to the changes in section 65. So these are changes to the operations and maintenance appropriation for Minnesota State colleges and universities. You can see the new language beginning on page 44 of the DE2. So this contains a new ongoing appropriation of $1.5 million in fiscal year 2027 for an identity verification system to combat enrollment fraud. It also specifies that contracts for that system are subject to the Government Data Practices Act. So this is the ghost student issue that the committee heard in House File 4698. The second new item on 44.19 of the DE2 is $5,000 in one-time funding for reforestation at Bemidji State University. Madam Chair, that concludes the walkthrough of the DE2.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. So, Mr. Savory.
Chair and members, I'll briefly go over the spreadsheet that was contained in your packet. You'll see a timestamp on the upper right-hand corner for the 14th of April at 5:41 p.m. There are several non-fiscal related policy changes that are listed on the OHE section on lines 9, 10, 11, and 12. Those are no-cost fiscal items that are related to rider changes or policy changes. I just put those as information for the committee, and Mr. Hopkins reviewed those a moment ago. There are 2 appropriation changes. For Minnesota State, line 19 is related to the Bemidji State tree replacement. It's $5,000. It's a one-time appropriation in FY27. And then line 20 is related to the enrollment fraud identity software, the Go student issue that the committee considered earlier in the year. It's $1.5 million in FY27, and that $1.5 million occurs in the tails in each fiscal year. Additionally, you'll see on lines 48 beginning, there's additional special revenue fund revenue collected related to the licensing and registration litigation response. That's $184,000 of additional revenue to the special revenue fund in FY27, and that continues into the tails. And then flipping the page over, you'll see additionally on line 53, additional expenditures related to that licensing and registration work from the Department of the Office of Higher Education. So that's $84,000 a year on line 53, beginning in FY27 and continuing into the tails. And then, Madam Chair and members, that concludes the fiscal items for the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Savory. So, members, we are going to go on to the amendments. So, first we have the amendment labeled A8. Representative Rarick, would you offer the A8 and tell us briefly about your amendment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So the A8 is in response to an issue that we had here at the legislature at the end of last session. And we were unable to come to an agreement to actually perform our duty to elect regents. So there were 4 regents that we were not able to elect. And instead, the governor, Madam Chair, had the opportunity to appoint his own regents. And while a couple of the regents made sense and we knew who they were and they'd gone through the process, there were 2 that we had never heard of before. And I mentioned this last time we were talking about this bill. And what happened was we had 2 members of the public that were unknown to us. They didn't go through the RCAC committee. They didn't go through any of our vetting. And instead, they kind of just came out of the blue. And so it really perked my interest as to who these people were. And I would note that the 2 that the governor picked, one was a major donor. All I could find were Democrat donor recipients, but there might be others, but primarily Democrat donor. And then the other person was actually bought a house with and living with his person within his administration that was running his office when he was running for Vice President of the United States. And so that seemed like 2 massive conflicts of interest to me. And so what this amendment does is exactly what the bill would have done if we would have been able to pass it through, by saying that the only people that the governor can actually appoint are people that came through the legislative process. So that gets to this issue of conflicts of interest, Madam Chair. These are pretty massive conflicts of interest. Samuel Hines donated $30,000 just to the Walz administration, to the Walz campaign, and huge amounts, hundreds of thousands of dollars to other Democrat candidates. And the other one, like I said, was so in-house that the person that was running his office when he was off running around the nation actually lives in the same house, and they bought a house together in Minneapolis. So that's what this gets at, and it narrows and it targets who the governor can actually appoint, and that's people that we actually know who they are and that we vetted. That's what this amendment does, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair Rarick. Is there any discussion to the A8? Chair Cleaborn.
Thank you very much. And this is actually for Mr. Hopkins, if you, Chair.
Of course.
Thank you. If you would please look at line 1.9, where it says that the governor may only appoint a candidate recommended by the Joint Legislative Committee. When we were working on the Senate File 856, and we were looking at the constitutionality of the legislature telling the governor who the governor could or could not appoint, we had that constitutional issue with that bill that we had to change. Would this fall into that same constitutional issue?
Mr. Hopkins.
Madam Chair, Representative Cleaborn, and members, so the Constitution of the state of Minnesota does perpetuate to the regents the authorities that are granted to them, that were granted to them by the territorial legislature in what is now the University of Minnesota's charter. The Constitution doesn't really speak specifically to the governor's appointment power. That is in the charter, but that's not specifically spoken to in the Constitution, so.
That's not the issue, though, that I'm looking
Chair Cleaborn, please go through
Thank
the
you so
chair.
much. Apologies. The issue that I'm referencing is the legislative joint committee telling the governor who the governor must appoint.
Mr. Hopkins.
Madam Chair, Representative Cleaborn, so yet the governor's appointment power is only addressed in the University of Minnesota's charter, which was passed by the territorial legislature. So this would be a constraint on the governor's appointment power that the legislature would be passing. I can't really speak definitively on the constitutionality of it, should it be challenged.
Okay, thank you. Chair Cleaborn?
Thank you. I think this is a serious flaw in this particular, I think it could have been worded a little bit differently. I apologize, I didn't see it early enough to talk to you in advance, but I would encourage our side not to vote for this. I think it's a constitutional issue. Thank you.
Chair Rarick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I find that interesting because in '23, your side passed all kinds of things that are now being challenged in the court. Lots and lots of them. This doesn't have any constitutional issues. I didn't hear a single thing that our nonpartisan staff said that shows that this has constitutional issues. I don't believe it does because we have the constitutional responsibility and duty to actually appoint regents, and we didn't do that. There was, things that went afar, whatever you want to say, at the end of session last time. For whatever reason, I couldn't get agreement from your side of the aisle to actually hold the joint convention, and so here we are. And then the governor got to appoint whoever he wanted, and while he did look at most of the candidates that we had originally looked at, he threw in a couple of these two that came through that nobody had ever heard of. He had heard of, obviously, because I'm sure he knew them personally and socially and professionally in all kinds of ways. So, but we, the legislature, had no idea who they were. So I see massive conflicts of interest in what the governor did. And I don't want him or any him after, her after, to have that same abuse of power, because that's what it is. It's an abuse of power when you put your buddies and your campaign funders and your, your top staffers, in-house, whatever you want to call him, they bought a house together and lived together and have a relationship together, in charge of the University of Minnesota. So I see that as a massive conflict of interest, and I think that we need to nip it in the bud and not allow it to happen again. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chair Coulter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The thing that strikes me about this language, Representative Rarick, is that you use the phrase conflict of interest several times, but this language doesn't say anything about conflicts of interest. All it says is that if the legislature doesn't elect regents, that the governor has to choose from folks recommended by the Joint Legislative Committee. If the concern is conflicts of interest, why not address that? Why, all, these folks that you have concerns about, hypothetically, they didn't, but they could have gone through the process. Nothing would have stopped them other than folks, voting for or against them from going through that, from being recommended by the Joint Legislative Committee, which would have allowed them to be appointed if this were to become law. So I'm seeing a little bit of a disconnect from what you are trying to address with what the language in the amendment actually says.
Chair Rarick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And while I have the mic and the floor, I will ask for a roll call on this, please.
A roll call has been requested and will be granted. Did you have any other comments?
Very quickly.
Okay, Chair Rarick.
Thank you, very quickly. So while it doesn't specifically say the words conflict of interest, we do a lot of things in legislation birthed out of a problem, and the problem is the conflict of interest that the governor clearly had. He clearly appointed people that there was a conflict of interest. A major campaign donor to his campaign became a regent. Somebody that was the live-in partner of his top staffer became a regent. And you wonder, well, okay, so here's the thing about regents, right? They don't make money, but what they have is tremendous connection and tremendous power and tremendous influence. So there absolutely cannot be conflict of interest. And how you get through the conflict of interest is you go through the RCAC process, you go through the legislative process, and those things should be borne out. But when you're doing things behind closed doors, as the governor did, and I know that we've done a data request and we've seen some of the documents, troves of documents, but what we're doing here on camera and being transparent did not happen when the governor did these 2 appointments. So I would urge a yes vote on this so we can add this. We had this as a bill, we vetted it as a bill, and now I'm bringing it back as an amendment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Chair. I agree that, yes, there was a bill on that, but I think in that conversation, we said clearly this is a hot topic. We should have more discussion about it, and I don't think it's ready for prime time this year, given what we've heard here, potential constitutional challenges, potential not addressing the issue at hand. And, frankly, if there's really an issue with conflicts of interest in politics, right? Trump's entire cabinet is made up of folks that are in the Epstein files. That seems like a conflict. Doge seems like a conflict, right? I mean, the president getting rich as president for being president seems like a conflict. So I would love to see a kind of a congruence of input. If conflicts of interest in politics are a problem, I can't wait to hear more from your side about whether or not that's acceptable if you're in the federal government, but suddenly it's a problem in state government. That's quite interesting.
Chair Barrett, do you care to respond?
So, it's interesting. When we had the hearing before, Madam Chair, every time I tried to say something, the other side of the aisle started screaming over top of me, and I've never had that happen to me ever in this legislature. But when I bring up this, I had multiple people scream over top of me as I was trying to give my testimony. So maybe we didn't have a full conversation last time, but that's probably because every time I tried to say something, I was cut off and people were yelling over top of me. So let's just leave it at that. So this is something that's incredibly important. We need to do this today. I'm surprised that you're not in favor of actually having something like this so that we, the legislature, will actually fulfill our duties and the governor doesn't have to get to appoint whoever he wants. But, there we are. So, Madam Chair, I ask for a roll call and I'm asking for a yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have a couple more people who want to comment. Chair Cleavorn.
Thank you, and I actually don't mind the intent behind the amendment. I think it's good governance. I don't have a problem with that. What I'm trying to do is solve for what I perceive to be a constitutional issue that I have experienced in another similar type of important bill. I'm wondering if you would consider a friendly amendment that instead of saying may only appoint a candidate recommended by the Joint Legislative Committee, if you would consider may only appoint a candidate recommended by the RCAC. Because that way it takes it away from us. We couldn't come to an agreement. The RCAC has screened, or candidates screened by the RCAC, which is what the student who was here that day recommended. Then I would be able to say, yes, okay, I'll vote for it. But in this particular case, with it being the Joint Legislative Committee, I can't. But I really do appreciate the idea of clean governance. And so if you would be willing to amend it one way or the other, candidates screened by the RCAC, which I think Representative Allen might have even been interested in, or candidates recommended by the RCAC. Either one would be fine with me, but it would just be a friendly amendment, and then I would be happy to vote yes for this.
Chair Barrett.
Well, you pose an interesting question. So I would be amenable to something that said that they were recommended to the legislature, because I'll tell you why. So my husband, bless his heart, served hours and hours and hours and hours on RCAC, and they arduously went through over 30 applications, narrowed it down, did their interviews, and then sent their recommendations to the legislature. So if you're talking about all of the applicants that went to RCAC versus the ones that they actually sent to us, that's a hugely different group of people. So I would consider I'd like to hear a little more input from my side, but I would consider narrowing it to those that were recommended to the legislature by the RCAC. That's a little bit better list than, you know, all of those that applied, because that's a huge list, and some of them were not deemed as acceptable, qualified candidates coming through. So I'd like to hear from our side of the aisle a little bit more, Chair Robbins.
Thank you, Chair Rarick. And while people consider their thoughts on that, I am going to go to Chair Norm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chair Rarick, for bringing this forward. I think there's some questions. I think the failure of legislative process should not be a problem for the governor. And here's why. I think we have a process. It requires us to make those appointments. We did not do it. We failed to do that. And quite frankly, that will have forced us to get to the finish line. This amendment does not address the underlying issue. If the same candidates came through any other process, they may have the conflict of interest, they may have all the challenges. This amendment does not address that. The other piece I think I'm looking into is, what if there isn't any recommendation based on what it is right now? If there's a zero recommendation from the legislative, the Joint Legislative Committee that makes that recommendation as is right now, does that also mean that the governor cannot make any appointment? Because those powers are in the statute saying that the governor can make those appointments. So this only addresses one portion, doesn't address the other option whereby if there's none whatsoever when it comes to the Joint Legislative Committee making that recommendation. Where do we go from there? Are we going to be accusing whoever is the governor to look through conflict of interest and whatnot, and how do they do their duty? That's the core issue here. And I think we need to go back to the process whereby it's our duty, not the governor's duty, to make those appointments. And that's what we need to be focused on, and how do we make sure that we take that action regardless of the disagreement that we have.
Thank you, Chair Rarick. And then I have a suggestion when she responds, we can keep moving along.
Yep. So a couple of things there. First of all, I have a note from our wonderful staff that because we are doing amendments to an amendment, we can't amend the amendment to the amendment. But if, yeah, it's a technical thing. You know, you can't do an amendment to the amendment to the amendment. So, so we can't do that as much as I would like to do an oral amendment to that. Right. Yeah, it's one of those tricky things since we're always starting with a DE and this is an amendment to the DE. But I would say if you were willing to put it on and we could work on an amendment in Ways and Means. So the other thing I would say is, again, there was only one thing and one reason only that we did not elect 4 regents. And that is because I couldn't get agreement to do so from your side of the aisle. The Senate was on board with me. I was on board. We had the letter ready to go. We had all the staff in the House of Representatives ready to go. We had everything ready to go. All I needed was one signature from my co-chair, and I could not get it. So I have no idea why. I was never given a reason why. So I think it's interesting that that's your reason why you don't want to support this, is because we didn't do our job. Well, we didn't do our job because you didn't want to do our job. I couldn't get agreement. So you know, that's what I have to say about that. I don't think there's anything wrong with this amendment. We can maybe tweak it a little bit in Ways and Means once it gets there, but I would again encourage a yes vote.
Thank you. Chair Liebling, did you want to comment as well?
I would. Thank you, Madam Chair. And, you know, it's an interesting discussion. I also think, thank you for bringing the amendment. I mean, I think it's good to have this discussion. I would like us to stop kind of rehashing old slights, though, and really think about moving forward more. And I do think the point about, you know, not the term conflict of interest keeps getting used. I think what we're really talking about here is pay to play, pay to play. And I think all of us would agree that pay to play is not something we want to see in the state of Minnesota. We are unfortunately seeing it all over the federal government, especially now. But we don't want to see that in Minnesota. It's a form of corruption, probably. Maybe not an illegal form, I don't know, but something we don't want. So I think the idea of having some constraints, maybe though, as others have said, we need some different language. I agree with that. Now, we've gotten to the point here in this committee where the question is, do we adopt this now and then fix it later? Or do we not put it on now and continue to work on this and try to fix it later? I would prefer that latter thing. I don't want to vote for this in the form it's in because I really don't think it's right. And I kind of agree with Chair Cleburne that it could be unconstitutional, but that's not my primary objection to it. I mean, this is a path. These things are going to move. But I would commit to you, Chair Rarick, that I would work with you on this because I do want to see that fixed. And I think many of us on this side do want to see that fixed, but we want to make sure that it's fixed in a way that, you know, isn't about, you know, what happened before, but that kind of sets a good framework for whatever might happen in the future. So make sure there is no pay to play in any form. So, you know, I would prefer that you maybe withdraw this amendment so that we're not voting against, because I share your concern. I just don't share the method right here, but I think we can get to something.
Thank you. Chair Rarick, quickly respond, or you can wait for Representative Scott. Okay, Chair Scott.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And a couple things. I wanted some clarification from Mr. Hopkins. What, in an amendment like this, when it regards the Board of Regents, what trumps what? The territorial agreement or the Constitution?
Mr. Hopkins.
So, Madam Chair, Representative Scott, there are no precedential Minnesota Supreme Court holdings on that precise issue. So the territorial legislature passed a law that became the University of Minnesota Charter. The Constitution of the state of Minnesota references that territorial law that became the University of Minnesota Charter. And it says specifically that all the rights, immunities, franchises, and endowments heretofore granted or conferred upon the University of Minnesota are perpetuated unto the university. So the Constitution doesn't exactly speak to the governor's power to appoint regents in the absence of an election by the legislature. It only says that bit that I read. The University of Minnesota Charter still controls how the legislature goes about electing regents, the fact that the governor has this appointment power. So this legislature's ability to change that process or constrain the governor's appointment power and how that relates to Article 13, Section 3 of the Minnesota Constitution hasn't been squarely addressed by the Minnesota Supreme Court. I would mention, however, though, that the last section of the University of Minnesota Charter says that the Legislative Assembly, which of course is referring to the Territorial Legislative Assembly, may at any time alter, amend, or modify, or repeal this act. So it's a bit of an open question how much this legislature can address the election and appointment powers for regents that are addressed in the University of Minnesota Charter. I'm sorry, I can't give you a more definitive answer.
That was fantastic, Mr.
great.
Hopkins. And for the public watching, I hope you appreciate with all of us the incredible depth of our staff. That was, I mean, he didn't get any prep on these questions. He just
Right,
knew that
right.
stuff.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Chair Scott.
Yeah, and based on your reading of that, even though it's not been challenged, I mean, that last paragraph or last sentence or two leads me to think that it rests with us to make any changes. And so I don't know. I think we're arguing over something that's shouldn't be an argument. I think it's pretty plain. I don't think it's a constitutional issue at all. And I think we don't want the pay to play. And we do see that here in the state of Minnesota. We saw that in the Attorney General's office, and we see that even through the appointment of commissioners, even through the appointment of the Met Council, the governor gets to choose all those people. So this is one area that the legislature has had purview over, and I don't think we should give that up. I think we've given too much territory to the governor already, especially through the Met Council. It's such a problematic thing that he gets to appoint those people, and most all of them are in some way friendly to his cause, his or her cause. It's been that way since it changed over to having the Met Council appointed. So I think we're really arguing over nothing here. That's a nothing burger. I think this language is fine the way it is, and I understand, you know, we're divided and all that, but I think this is making something out of nothing, and we have the complete authority to make this change without any challenges at the Constitution.
Thank you. Any final comments, Chair Rarick? Otherwise, we'll move to the roll call.
Yeah, so I still would like to move this forward, and if there's a small tweak, and really I do mean a small tweak to this, it needs to be done in Ways and Means, we can definitely do that. But I would like to continue to vote to put this on. I still would like a yes vote, and I'm still going to do the roll call. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Chair Rarick renews her motion to adopt the A8. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Robbins,
Aye.
Chair Wogelmatt,
No.
Vice Chair Schwartz. Vice Chair Coulter,
No.
Representative Allen,
Allen votes yes.
Representative Duran,
Yes.
Representative Hansen,
No.
Representative Hicks,
No.
Representative Cleaborn,
Cleaborn, no.
Representative Liebling,
Liebling, no.
Representative Noor,
No.
Representative Novotny,
Novotny, yes.
Representative Rarick,
Yes, absolutely.
Representative Scott,
Yes.
There being 7 ayes and 7 nays, the amendment fails. Now we will move on to Amendment 12. Representative Coulter, would you care to offer the A12?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will move the A12 amendment. Well, as my wife would remind me, hope is a thing with feathers. I'm not giving up. This amendment would put $60 million one time into the state grant program. It's a little bit less than half of the overall shortfall. We know that the state grant program is a crucial piece of helping our Minnesota students afford to go to college, and we know it does face a significant shortfall. And I actually saw a poll just yesterday, actually, from Pew Research that showed a majority of Americans believe that higher education is on the wrong track in this country. And overwhelmingly, the number one reason, I think it was close to 80%, who said, the number one reason for that folks gave was that it's too expensive to go to college. And we have been, I think, making very good strides in this state to help folks afford college. And I think the state grant absolutely fits into that. And it serves students at every college and every university in the state. And so I think, frankly, this is just an opportunity for those students, the students at St. Cloud, at Bemidji State, at St. Olaf, at Gustavus, at St. Kate's, to know that we are ready to step in and do what we can to fix the shortfall now and then fix it better in the future. So that is the A12 amendment, and I would request a roll call.
Thank you. The roll call having been requested will be granted. Is there any discussion to the A12? Chair Rarick.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, you know, this is just plugging the hole. Like you said, it's one time. And the problem is we have a structural deficit. And I know we had OHE here at least 3 times saying that we have a structural deficit. We have a structural imbalance. And that was created in '23 when we did a lot of things and didn't fund it. So in '23, we added North Star Promise, which is free college to anyone that has a household income of $80,000 or less. We also expanded a few other things like, it's a little hard to explain to the public, but your student aid index number could go all the way to a negative 1,500, which basically meant that people, about 43% or so of those getting state grant got a lot more state grant. And that drained our state grant fund by $131 million, which is where the hole is right now. So without fixing the structural imbalance, I am not going to support putting more money in because we haven't fixed anything yet. When we were talking about what we could agree to, we agreed to one small piece. There's 2 other or 3 other really big pieces that need to change. One of them is changing the negative SII, moving it back to 0 where it was prior to 23, and doing some parameters around North Star Promise that make it a little bit more workable, because right now we've created a massive imbalance, and this doesn't fix the imbalance. So I would ask my members to vote no on this because we're not fixing anything. This is a temporary, and not even, it's 131 million is the whole, and this is 60 of that. So it's a small move in that direction, but Madam Chair, I would ask for a no vote on this.
Thank you, Chair Rarick. Any other discussion? Any final, Chair Cleaborn.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, if I may ask Mr. Savory a question?
Yes, please proceed. Mr. Savory, you're on deck.
Mr. Savory, I just heard that we did not fund state grant in 2023. Could you please tell me, do you know what amount of money was put into state grant, new money in 2023?
We'll give Mr. Savory just a moment.
Thank you.
Chair and members, I can definitely find that out in the next probably 3 or 4 minutes or so, but from my memory, there were positive appropriations made in the 23 bill related to the state grant. And if you just give me 1 second, I can look that up.
It's
in a
okay.
moment.
As long as I know that, sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. I thought we did make appropriations. I just wanted, I will go with your memory of yes, we did. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Rarick.
To clarify, I didn't mean that you didn't fund, that the legislature didn't fund a little bit more, but when we came back in 24, we had, I think it was $102 million shortfall that we worked on, and we closed that gap. And now we're looking at $131 million shortfall. So whatever money was put in, it was woefully inadequate. And now we don't have a $19 billion surplus anymore. It's gone. So, here we are. We have, in the tails, we have a very, very small, possible, hopeful surplus, ever so small. But, we've got some, you talk about the current administration. We have now a war in Iran, and we have all kinds of things happening. So I think this tiny, tiny, hopeful little surplus in the tails is probably not going to be there. So if we're going to put money in, we need to fix the imbalance. That's what I'm talking about. So I'm saying this isn't going to fix it. We need to fix the structural problems that we broke in 23. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair Rarick. Vice Chair Coulter, any final comments on your amendment?
Yeah, just to sort of be clear here, having started on staff just after the Palenti years, 377 million is still a pretty big surplus in comparison. But there are there's several factors to the state grant shortfall. And I think we should be clear that when we're talking about the student aid index, what we are talking about is really recognizing how needy our students are, and that there are more needy students than we expected. And that is just one piece. The other piece being tuition increasing faster than was originally expected, and enrollment increasing. Enrollment has gone through the roof at so many of our schools because of the things that we did in part in 2023, which is a challenge that we as the folks who set the budget have to address. But we all thought it was a good thing. So. I'm not going to claim this is solving the problem now and forevermore, but this is something that we can do to soften the blow on students who really need it.
Thank you. Representative Coulter renews his motion to adopt the 812 amendment. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Robbins?
No.
Chair Wolgamott?
Aye.
Vice Chair Schwartz?
No.
Vice Chair Coulter?
Aye.
Representative Allen?
No.
Representative Duran?
Nope.
Representative Hansen?
Yes.
Representative Hicks?
Yes.
Representative Cleaborn?
Cleaborn, pass.
Representative Liebling?
Aye.
Representative Noor,
Aye.
Representative Novotny,
No.
Representative Rarick,
No.
Representative Scott,
Did, she passed. Yes, you have to go back to her, sorry.
Representative Cleburne,
Yes.
Thank you. So there being 7 ayes and 7 nays, the amendment fails. Representative Coulter, would you like to move the A13?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will move the A13 amendment, and I will request a roll call on this one as well.
A roll call having been requested will be granted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I will confess, this was actually inspired by the A8 amendment, and I think this actually gets a little more directly at the issue that I think we all raised, which is, and I think Representative Liebling rightly pointed out that the term is pay to play. And so what this does is it just says that the RCAC and the Joint Legislative Committee both cannot recommend a candidate for the Board of Regents who in the previous 2 years has made a contribution to the campaign committee of any legislative caucus, any member of the joint committee itself, or a person holding legislative leadership positions defined in statute. And I'm sure Mr. Hopkins would be able to give us the list if we're really curious. I think we've all pointed out that the regent election process is a process that starts with us and ideally should finish with us. And so I think if we're going to hold folks accountable to addressing these kinds of concerns about who gets elected to the Board of Regents, we should hold ourselves accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Coulter. Is there any discussion? Chair Rarick.
Thank you. Well, this is the first time seeing it. We didn't have this as a bill. We haven't had a conversation about it. And so, it's pretty difficult to just bring an amendment that wasn't a bill, wasn't a conversation. I mean, we finally had a conversation today where I wasn't interrupted, so that was nice. But I'm going to ask members to vote no on this simply because this hasn't been vetted or discussed in this committee, and we've had no testimony to this. I don't know where this language came from, other than you said it was inspired by a bill that we did here. So, Madam Chair, I would ask for a no vote.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion to this amendment? Representative Hicks.
Thank you. I actually really like this because I really like that it was inspired by the conversation we had when we heard the other bill, which I will be really frank, when we heard that bill the first time, it had never even crossed my mind that people would pay to play for a job that doesn't pay you anything. And it's just a whole lot of headache and work. Like, I am perplexed every time those folks come into my office and are like, I really want to do this. And my question is always, well, why? Because I genuinely, it's perplexing to me. And so it had never crossed my mind that anyone would pay to play because I still can't figure out. Anyway, so I really like this because I actually don't think that folks should be wanting to be a regent and just getting that because they donate it to the right caucus or they donate it to the right person in the committee. I'm a really big fan of getting pay to play kind of out of all politics in general, both here in Minnesota, in the regents, in our elections, and nationally. I find it to be just a really gross process as somebody who doesn't have money to pay to play. So I will be voting yes on this because I think it's good governance. And I don't think we need to have an entire separate bill when we've already had a discussion about how we have concerns that the regents are paying to play. This just says they can't. I like that.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for the amendment author here. Would this actually limit the governor's choice, or would this not fix the problem that we actually talked about? Because the governor can actually choose whoever he wants, wherever he wants, whatever it is. So does this bill actually get to limiting who the governor can choose? Like, I guess the amendment that Representative Rarick was talking about, that might be a constitutional issue. Is this, are we limiting I guess, the ability for the governor to pick whoever he wants? Is that what this bill does too?
Vice Chair Coulter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The governor has nothing to do with this amendment. This amendment deals strictly with the process for electing regents as it exists within the legislature. So the process is that the RCAC recommends candidates to the joint committee. The joint committee then recommends candidates to the joint convention, at which time the joint convention elects regents. The governor is not involved in that process at all. All this amendment says is that the RCAC cannot recommend candidates who have made a contribution to a caucus campaign committee, a campaign committee for a member of the joint committee, so any member of either the House or Senate higher education committees, or the campaign committee of anyone holding a legislative leadership position. It does not have anything to do with the governor. It does not change the governor's authority. The governor is not involved in this process at all.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that's exactly what I'm trying to get at here, is because you're sending these people over here for us to vet, and these great people that we're actually sending towards this Regency selection area, but the governor may not even choose those people to deal with. So it actually doesn't address the actual concern that we have on this side of the aisle. And I'm just trying to figure out, because it's not addressing what we have for the concerns on this side of the aisle. We actually just want to say, hey, if the legislation says, or if the legislation pushes over people that we have vetted, that might be the person that the governor is going to choose. At this point in time, the governor can just do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and just, no, it isn't going to change the fact that he just has that ability. So I would agree, no on this.
Thank you. Vice Chair Coulter, a quick response, because we have a growing list again, so.
Yeah, I can be quick. I mean, I think maybe we're just talking about two different problems. I'm not trying to address the problem that you were trying to address with your amendment. I'm trying to address the issue that I don't think anybody who made political contributions to folks involved with the process of electing regents, which is only the legislature unless and until we don't do that, those folks should not be considered for a position that is elected by the legislature, period.
Thank you. Representative Novotny.
Thank you, and I don't want to be left out from the meow game here, so pay to play, pay to play. Representative Coulter, I'm trying to read the section 3.099 subdivision 3 on the phone here. Maybe you could help me understand what positions are covered under that.
Vice Chair Coulter.
I would defer to Mr. Hopkins. I don't want to pull it up on my phone right now.
Mr. Hopkins.
Madam Chair and members, so that refers to legislative leaders that receive the additional salary because of their legislative leadership position. I am not positive exactly which members of the legislative leadership receive that, but it refers to the ones that receive the additional salary because of their leadership position.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Chair Novotny.
So the next logical follow-up question would be, and Mr. Hopkins, would the governor be included in that section?
Mr. Hopkins.
Madam Chair, Representative Novotny, no. The campaign contributions to the governor would not be included under this language.
Thank you, Chair Novotny.
Well, that's enough for me to vote no on this, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate Representative Coulter's enthusiasm of being inspired by the bill that was brought previously. I never thought bringing something like that up earlier would have been bring on such a hot topic amongst everybody when it comes to selecting regents. I had, after presenting that bill, I had an opportunity to talk to several different regents, individuals that had applied previously, individuals that had made it through the process, and was given a lot of interesting feedback as far as what's the effectiveness of the RTEC program selection process, to how does the University of Minnesota currently operate in terms of between the foundation itself, assets being transferred over into that, versus the actual Regency board and how they're operating in light versus how foundation operates in the dark, which starts bringing out several different questions as far as what's the effectiveness of the individuals that we select, their autonomy to, or their removal from the impact of alumni association and everything to actually work as a fully functioning board that freely thinks for itself without having outside entities impacting its every decision that it makes. It has spurred a lot of questions, I think, that where it currently stands, it's something I think as a higher ed committee, it's something we truly need to put some full-throated responses into it and think about this long-term and its impact. Especially from the standpoint of individuals that would apply to be regents, but are nervous about the scrutiny that they would get and the impact it would have within their businesses as well. I never intended for something like this to come down to such a partisan issue. To be perfectly honest with you, I think the amendment we had on our end of it, I think really does speak to what's happening on the federal, your concerns on the federal level, specifically around pay to play. It doesn't make a difference if it's Republican or Democrat. I think we can all agree with that. And when it comes to a university and an entity like this, it's too important to screw something up. I appreciate your enthusiasm, Representative Coulter. I am going to be a no on this because I agree in your words, like you said previously, it's not ready for prime time, but this deserves everybody to come to the table and work together. And I honestly mean that. We got to get this institution up and working and functioning to bring it back to where it was at. But by doing some of these, this particular bill, it's my fear we're going to make more damage or create more issues and have more unintended consequences than we expect. So, thank you.
Thank you. Quickly, because we have more speakers on the list here. Thank you, Vice Chair Coulter.
Yes, I promise I will be quick. First of all, Representative Allen, I agree it shouldn't be partisan. The region election process shouldn't be partisan. This language is not partisan. It says any contribution to any committee of a legislative caucus, any member of a joint committee, any person holding legislative leadership. None of those are specific to either or any party. So I completely agree. The second thing I want to say is that I 100% agree that the regent process is about the screwiest process we have in a place full of screwy processes. So I am being completely serious here. I'm gonna I don't know how else to say this. I'm gonna ask for your phone number after this meeting so that we can begin a conversation about, it always sounds, I don't know as an adult how to ask that. So, because I went down Mr. Hopkins can attest, I went down the rabbit's hole about how to try and fix this process. And I am so glad that somebody else wants to do that with me. So I will bring you down that rabbit hole with me, and I am committed to fixing the process.
Thank you, Chair Liebling.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And so, members, I'm glad, I'm really happy to hear that last exchange. And I really think we ought to be working on this. We need to. I think we can come up with some things. And so I'm kind of back to where we were with Chair Rarick's amendment, where she wanted to just, she asked us to, let's adopt it and we can work on it as we go to ways. And the alternative to that would have been, what if we withdraw it and have a commitment to work on it, and some people work on it, and then come back with something that maybe more people can be comfortable with? So, I don't know if, I think to do that, I wouldn't ask Representative Coulter to agree to that unless there was somebody on the other side who said they were going to work with him on it. But I think we can, this is clearly, his amendment is not addressing the same issue as Representative Rarick's amendment. These are two different things, but they are related, and there's no reason we can't try to do something bringing all of this together. But Representative Rarick was talking about pay to play, and this is about pay to play. And maybe there is a way to make sure that the governor, should the governor get another opportunity, that would be excluded for the governor as well. I mean, I like to see that. I don't care which party it is either. We do not want to go down the pay-to-play rabbit hole in this state any more than we have. And if we have, we need to pull it back now. So maybe some people could get together, work on this, and come back with something that actually, you know, tries to address this. My 2 cents.
Thank you, Chair Liebling. Do you mind if I just go to Chair Cleaborn, and then you can wrap?
This is just such a small thing. I am so tired of hearing Governor he when the governor could be a man or woman. And so if we could just say governor, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any final comments, Vice Chair Coulter?
Yeah, no, I mean, I will just say on this amendment, you know, I kept the language very tight on purpose to limit it only to folks in the legislature directly involved with, most directly, I guess I should say, with the regional election process. So I think we'll stick with it and we'll let the votes go where they go.
Thank you. Vice Chair Coulter renews his motion to adopt the A13 amendment. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Robbins?
No.
Chair Wolgamott? Aye. Vice Chair Schwartz? No. Vice Chair Coulter?
Aye.
Representative Allen?
No.
Representative Duran?
No.
Representative Hanson?
Yes.
Representative Hicks?
Yes.
Representative Cleaborn?
Cleaborn, aye.
Representative Liebling?
Aye.
Representative Noor?
No, aye.
Representative Novotny? No. Representative Rarick?
No.
Representative Scott?
There being 7 ayes and 7 nays, the amendment is not adopted. Representative Allen, would you care to offer the A14?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bring before you the A14 amendment. If it sounds familiar, it is, because we've talked about this in committee. Just as a refresher, the A14 amendment makes targeted changes to the state grant program by tightening how negative family contributions are counted, giving the Office of Higher Education flexibility to adjust living allowances or calculations when there is surplus funding, and increasing the overall appropriation by $10 million. Together, these changes are intended to better control costs while still allowing flexibility to support students when funding allows. The A14 makes the state grant program more financially sustainable by putting cleaner limits on how far negative family contributions can drive grant awards, which helps prevent the program from becoming structurally unaffordable as federal need analysis changes. The A14 still preserves flexibility for students because it allows the Office of Higher Education to make upward adjustments later if there's surplus funding available, rather than locking in a more expensive formula permanently. The A14 is a balanced approach because it pairs cost controls with a $10 million appropriation increase, showing this is not just a cutback amendment, but rather an attempt to stabilize the program while still putting more money in it, putting more money in. The A14 protects the long-term integrity of the state grant program by making the formula more predictable and less vulnerable to sudden cost spikes, which is more important in the legislature wants the program to remain workable for future students as well. And I will turn it back
Thank you, Representative Allen. Is there any discussion to the A14? Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's really important that we talk about this for what it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat it or use legislative words or anything. What this proposal does is it literally balances a problem, a financial problem, by pulling out the rug from underneath poor students who need it the most, for who college is arguably one of the only ladders out of poverty. You are looking at somebody who would be hurt by this. I would not be sitting before you if this were the law of the land. So I want that to be really clear with everybody, that if you're for taking away an opportunity for people who could get out of poverty through one of the only means we have, is a higher education. These are people who are disproportionately impacted by higher crime rates in their communities, lower social determinants of health, higher risks of diseases like cancer and more. These are children whose brains have developed differently than their peers who come from communities and families with more money. These kids, these are humans, adults entering adulthood, who as children, the world did nothing about the negative impacts that they had, let them be forced into trauma they never should have experienced, left them to the wind, and we're gonna say, in this time, in this era, at this point, when this country is doing what we're doing, with HR 1 and cutting our opportunities to have credits for our health insurance coverage and so much more, when somebody making over $5 million a year, HR 1's gonna give them a tax break of over $800 a day. And somebody who is making $100,000 or less might see $2 a day in a tax credit because of that, on top of having to make up for the costs that we are putting on counties through whatever property tax thing. Thank goodness for the Minnesota Homestead Property Tax Credit that will help offset some of that. But this is the worst time to tell poor people, struggle more. So I ask for a no vote.
Representative Allen, any thoughts?
Madam, sorry, could I just request a roll call, please?
Yes, roll call has been requested and granted. Representative Allen, do you want to respond, or do you want Chair Rarick to go and then you wrap?
I'm more than happy to let Chair Eric go.
All right, Chair Rarick.
Okay. Again, we have a $131 million hole that was created because of policies that were passed by a Democrat trifecta in '23. One of the big policies that were changed is this policy right here. Although this is actually more gentle than the change that was made in '23, which allowed the student aid index to go all the way to a negative $1,500, which, by the way, 43% or so of people getting state grant are in that category of between 0 and a negative 1,500 student aid index. And this is a huge contributing factor to the huge hole. So we don't have new money because we spent it all. We had a $19 billion surplus and we spent it all. And we have maybe a hopeful little bit of money in the tails if we don't spend anything right now. We don't have money to spend. So there is only two options. Well, there's three. And I was told no on the other two. One, we cut some other program permanently and put the savings from that into state grant. I was told no, emphatically no, we're not cutting anything. Everything's important. Got to keep everything the same. I was told no. Second option, we can do this. We can roll back to where we were in '23, to where the student aid index was in '23, before we gave out $1,500 in most cases more, above tuition, above fees, above room and board, above all of those things. This is money above all of that. And if we adopt this, we're saying that we're willing to help and put 10 million more into the state grant program. That's what this does. So this gives flexibility to say, depending on the balance, if there is a surplus, then we are willing to give out more money. Right now, we're in a massive, massive deficit, $131 million because of policies that were made in this room in '23 by a Democrat trifecta. This is one of the components to try to bring back some balance and to bring some structural balance back to a horribly imbalanced state grant program. So I implore the other side of the aisle, please, please adopt this so that we can actually bring some balance back. Because you know what's going to happen is that there are a massive number of, I think it's about 80,000 students that get state grant. And there'll be a whole bunch of them that won't get state grant. So you're going to be hurting kids no matter what you do. We don't have more money to put into it. We don't have $60 million more to put into it because, frankly, it was all spent. We spent this massive surplus. It's all gone. And I doubt we're going to have, if we spend nothing, we may end up at zero in the tails. Highly unlikely. So we don't have new money. I don't know what the other options are. This is one of the options. You're not willing to cut any other programs to reallocate, so this is where we are. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Very quickly, Representative Hansen.
Thank you. I just heard you say we're hurting people no matter what we do. That's a choice. That's a choice by this nation. That's a choice by policymakers. And as somebody who had to grit my way out of poverty, like it's a choice that we see people make. And this is going to affect your voters more than us. This is going to affect your constituents more than this side, because 63% of people in greater Minnesota and in rural Minnesota live paycheck to paycheck. It's only a third in the kind of concentrated metro area, right? This is going to affect your voters, your families. I mean, I come from a community in the suburbs that's pretty well off. My side of the district, not so much where I live, but on the other side of my district, it is really, really hardworking millennials who are busting their butts to make ends meet, professionals, dentists, chiropractors, that sort of thing. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about the families in your districts that are living like I live with my child, paycheck to paycheck, or that grew up like I did. So, I mean, this is a choice. Again, hurting people no matter what we do doesn't have to happen. It is not something we have to do. We don't have to do that. And I just really, really challenge that perception. And if you are going to go with that idea, why kick people who are already down?
Thank you. Very quickly, Chair Rarick, we need to wrap this up.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. So I would just say this, that if you have a household income of $80,000 or less, your tuition, your fees, your room and board, all those things are paid for. This is above and beyond that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, we are going to move on. Representative Allen, any closing remarks?
Yes. This is a program, like I stated before, was a program that my wife used, I used, generations of kids prior to me had used. It is better to have the program there than have it blow up and go away. I think we can all agree on it. There's several of you that have probably used this grant program like I have growing up. And when you had money in 2023, as well-intentioned as your decisions were, it made the program unstable. And it's breaking this program, unfortunately. I know you meant well by what you did, but I mean, it is better to have something than nothing. And all we're looking for when you're going to college is just to find a little bit of money here and there so you can try to get a degree. And this program, I think it helps stabilize it, helps put it in a better place than it was before. And like we said, we're trying to go back to the decision prior to 2023. I would urge a green vote. Let's stabilize this thing. Please, members.
Thank you. And I would just note for the record that this was in the governor's policy recommendation, and rather than a 1 year, it was permanent to remove the negative SAI. So with that, Representative Allen renews his motion to adopt the 814. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Robbins?
Aye.
Chair Wolgamott?
No.
Vice Chair Schwartz? Aye. Vice Chair Coulter?
Nope.
Representative Allen?
Yes.
Representative Duran?
Yes.
Representative Hansen?
No.
Representative Hicks?
No.
Representative Cleaborn?
No.
Representative Liebling?
No.
Representative Noor?
Nope.
Representative Notny?
Yes.
Representative Rarick? Aye. Representative Scott?
There being 7 ayes and 7 nays, the amendment is not adopted. Next, Chair Rarick, I think you're up for the 815.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this, again, is another hopeful structural fix. And this is taking North Star Promise, the household income of $80,000, bringing it down to $70,000 as the cap. And if we do that, I would put 10 million more into the state grant program. Because again, we really need to fix the structural deficit. Again, we've got a massive structural deficit. This is one little tiny move to try to fix the structural deficit. It saves about $21 million in the North Star Promise program that could be reallocated to the state grant program. If you add on the 10 million, that's 31 million that could go into the state grant program. That's what the amendment does. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair Burke. Is there any discussion to the A15? Vice Chair Coulter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to request a roll call.
Roll call having been requested is granted.
And I will just make the point that I've made before, that by cutting North Star, we are limiting assistance to students at our public colleges and universities to disproportionately help students at private colleges and universities. And I think Minnesotans can decide where our priorities should be.
Can we just move on to the other comments and then a final comment, Chair Rarick? Do you want to respond to that right now? Okay. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to cite my previous comments again, that, punching poor people when they're down is not, in this economy, is not the way to do it. And I will say it over and over and over again, because I ran for office because I didn't see people who lived like me talking about their lived experiences. And so that's why I talk about it so much. I know you're annoyed with it, but at the same time, I think it is a story to be told, because again, 2 out of 3 of your voters live paycheck to paycheck. A little over a third in the metro area do. And so I will speak for them. I will talk about this. I hope that they talk to you at the doors when you come visit them. But we need to remember that a living wage for a family of 4 in Minnesota is about $120,000. And so $80,000 doesn't even come anywhere close to meeting the real lived experiences of what people are going through. The disconnect from the reality of what people in my position and others that are breaking generational trauma, generational poverty, generational missing higher education opportunities, all of that. We are trying to make you hear us. And I guarantee you that you have people in your district that would want you to hear that too. So I will speak up on that, and I hope that when the next time you knock on someone's door who makes a family of 4 with less than $120,000, talk to them about how this is going to affect them, and really listen. And I hope you bring that back here next year should you get to come back to this body. Thanks.
Thank you. And I just want to level set for the public that what we are talking about is fixing the state grant for the people that have already been made financial aid promises, that we are trying to make sure that we can stay as close to what's already been promised to them as possible. It's not the long-term issue. This is for the one time, and we are trying to fix the structural part by addressing that in the future. Chair Burke.
Yeah, just really quickly, again, reiterate the fact that we don't have the money to do this. We are $131 million in the hole. So if you can come up with $131 million, and if you want to cut another program and put it back in, we can certainly do that. But I was told no on, because everything is a priority. So every single thing that we fund in a $4 billion biennial budget is important. Can't cut anything, can't put anything back into state grant. So I don't know what else to do, Madam Chair. We've tried everything, and we've been told no. So here's yet another no, we're not going to change and fix the structural problem, and we don't have money to fill the hole.
Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Chair Robbins. And I wasn't going to say anything, but time is coming to the end here for my stay in the House, and I've only told this story once, and I'll try to be brief as I can. You say nobody here looks like you or talks about your experience. I grew up on a farm back in the 80s, and if you know anything about the farming in the 80s, it was a rough, hard living. And we lost the farm to bankruptcy. And my brother and sister and mom and dad ended up moving to a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. So 5 of us living in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. Father was in a wheelchair at the time. And I slept on the floor in front of the TV when it got too cold to stay in the closet. And I worked and I saved and I didn't take a bunch of loans out. I worked full-time, went to school full-time. In the summer, I had 2 jobs. So just because I don't wear it on my sleeve, and I don't wear my past on my sleeve as I'm not a victim. I believe it made me who I am. not by what I got, but how I overcame it, and the rest of my family overcame it. And I'm proud of how my family overcame it, and we did it without this program. I went to school, I paid for it myself as I went. My wife paid for it as she went. We did this, and we paid off our bills. And said, just because we don't brag about our past as a form of victimhood, that doesn't mean that we haven't had similar experience where we've overcome. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair Novotny. Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. It's my understanding this is not just one time, so I wanted to make sure we were clear about that. Am I missing something?
So the moving of the cap from 80 to 70 would be permanent, I believe.
Thank you.
Yes, but it's to fix the current $131 million we are in the hole that is going to hurt students who are relying on financial aid awards they've already received. That was the point I was trying to make.
Okay.
And we do need to fix the structural part of this. Thank you, Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate that. So I also want to be clear to the public that when targets are set for committees in the legislature, it's the chair's jobs to advocate for what their committee needs to their speaker. And so if that was the money we needed so bad, I would ask, I'll join you in those meetings. I would love to. How can I help? Because I know lots of places that we're letting millionaires and billionaires get tax breaks in this state, that I think that this is a better investment and a better use of that. So if we can put our heads together to find that, there's still a lot of time left in session. Our Speaker Emerita Hortman taught us that it's not over till the gavel drops on sine die. And if we can do everything we can to help the families who need this, we should do that. I also want to address Representative Novotny's comments. I want to thank you for sharing that story with us. I think that's actually really, really valuable, because when I was watching the legislature, I never heard people tell stories like that. So that was my point in saying that. So I think it matters because representation matters. People should be able to see themselves in this body. I know we've talked about some other stories of our upbringing, but I want to be very, very clear that I'm not bragging about victimhood. And I know you maybe didn't mean that, Representative Novotny. I see your face and I hear you say that, but that's your choice to kind of frame it that way if you want to. But I do think I want to be really clear that it's talking about my lived experiences isn't me trying to do that. I meet with the high school pages every week, for example, and every week I hear from one or two of them who say, thank you for telling me your story. I never knew there were people in politics like this. So I think it's not a matter of me talking about this because I need attention. Trust me, I get enough. I don't need that. It is a matter of me talking about this because I know there are people like me out there. There are high schoolers out there who want to know that people in this body know what it's like. And I hope that everybody, no matter who you are, what side of the aisle, where you're at in politics, lobbyist or otherwise, never forget where you came from. And just because we may have found the pathways to what brought us to where we are today, not everybody gets that opportunity. Not everybody's as resilient as you. Not everybody has maybe some of it's luck, some of it's just a harder work ethic, whatever it might be. Not everybody has all of that. And so that doesn't make anybody less worthy of seeing themselves representative in their government in Minnesota. We are a government of the people, so just want to be clear about that.
Thank you. Representative Rarick, any final comments?
So we don't have budget targets, so I'm not sure where that conversation comes from or goes to, because we don't have budget targets. But we also don't have, if we spend nothing, we still will have most likely a deficit in the tails because of global everything happening, right? So we have a war in Iran and so on and so on. So we have to fix this hole somehow. This is one small thing that we could do to try to fix this massive deficit. And I would ask for a yes vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Chair Rarick renews her motion to adopt the A15. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Robbins?
Aye.
Chair Wolgamott?
No.
Vice Chair Schwartz?
Aye.
Vice Chair Coulter?
No.
Representative Allen?
Yes.
Representative Duran?
Yes.
Representative Hanson?
No.
Representative Hicks?
No.
Representative Cleaborn?
Cleaborn, no.
Representative Liebling?
No.
Representative Noor?
Nope.
Representative Novotny? Yes. Representative Rarick?
Yes.
Representative Scott?
There being 7 ayes and 7 nays, the amendment is not adopted. Chair Scott, would you want to offer the A16? Sorry, my mic was off.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I will offer the A16. This would prohibit undocumented immigrants from receiving state-funded financial aid, makes conforming changes to the North Star Promise definitions, and increases the overall state grant appropriation by $30 million, beginning in 25-26 academic year. And I would encourage member support, and I'll go ahead and ask for the roll call, because I'll save you all the trouble.
A roll call having been requested is granted. Do you have any final comments? You were finishing up, Chair Rarick.
Madam Chair, as Chair Rarick has continued to say, something has to give in this budget when it comes to the state grant program. And this is one of the things that I think can make a meaningful difference. I've always thought that the kids of Minnesotans that have lived here their entire lives should go to the front of the line when it comes to financial aid or even getting into a college. So that's what this amendment is doing, and making some changes so that, you know, it's putting $30 million into the state grant program.
Thank you. Is there any discussion to the A16? Vice Chair Coulter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know how many different ways we need to say it. Undocumented folks are Minnesotans, period. You may not like it, but they are. I'm going to move on. I'm not going to dignify this policy discussion anymore here, except I think we need to be clear. Tuition has increased over the last 30 years at the rate 3 times inflation. The idea that folks can compare what tuition used to be even 10, 15 years ago to what it is now is, it's not a valid comparison. And, you know, we hear we don't have $60 million to spend on it. This amendment alone spends 30. If we had taken all of the Republican amendments, we would have spent $50 million more on the state grant. And, you know, again, I think to Representative Hansen's point, it's our job to do the work, to fight the fights that we need to fight to support our students. We don't know what next year is going to look like, but right now we have an estimated $3.7 billion budget surplus. Higher ed is around 6% of the overall state budget. Proportionately, that would be over $200 million. That would more than close a hole in the state grant. Claiming that we don't have the money to fix this is showing that we are making the choice not to fix this. And I would ask folks to vote no.
Is there any further discussion? Chair Scott, any final comments?
I think we've beat this issue to a pulp, so let's just vote.
Thank you. Chair Scott renews her motion to adopt the A16. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Robbins?
Aye.
Chair Wolgamott?
No.
Vice Chair Schwartz? Aye. Vice Chair Coulter?
Absolutely not.
Representative Allen?
Yes.
Representative Duran?
Yes.
Representative Hansen?
Nope.
Representative Hicks?
Nope.
Representative Cleaborn?
Cleaborn, no.
Representative Liebling?
No.
Representative Noor?
Nope.
Representative Novotny? Yes. Representative Rarick?
Yes.
Representative Scott?
Yes.
There being 7 ayes and 7 nays, the amendment fails. Seeing no further amendments to the DE2, we will vote on the DE2 amendment as amended. This is not the final vote on the bill. All those in favor of adopting the DE2 as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The DE2 amendment is as amended is adopted. We will now take public testimony on the DE2 as amended. Our first testifier is William Luther. Are you available? Oh, excellent. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record. And to be clear, we're on a tight timeline, so we are going to try to limit testimony to 2 minutes. Thank you.
I'll make
Sorry,
it quick,
Madam Chair, if I could just very quickly, you said the DE2 as amended. I don't believe we actually adopted any amendments. So just to clarify, the DE2
Thank you,
was not
Vice
actually
Chair
amended.
Coulter. The DE2, which was not amended, should we redo the vote or just state it?
No.
Let's
Okay.
redo it.
All right. Co-Chair Wolgamott wants to redo the vote, so we shall do it. So, members, none of the amendments were adopted. So the DE unamended, as originally introduced, is before us. All those in favor of the DE, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The DE2 is adopted and before us. Thank you, members. We have public discussion. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Robbins, Wolgamott, members of the committee. My name is William Luther. I'm the Director of State Affairs, the undergrad student government at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. I'll start by this. Thousands of students at the University of Minnesota rely on both the state grant and the North Star Promise program to achieve their educational goals. You've heard it here time and time again from countless students who have come to the state capitol, who have emailed you, who have maybe met with you in person, and how impactful these programs are to them. However, one provision in this current bill, as it states, will hurt students at the University of Minnesota, which is the cap on taking it from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities for tuition and fees down to the average four-year public university. This would limit public school students at the University of Minnesota to receive their full state grant. I mentioned previously, and in this committee, you mentioned previously about the importance of the SAI from the -$1,500 to the $0. If the cap is in place, the students at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities who would have that -$1,500, $0 and below, would not receive any additional money in terms of the cost of attendance. They will only be covered by the North Star Promise, which only covers the tuition and fees. So any room and board, any books, any technology, anything like that, University of Minnesota students, Twin Cities students, I'm pretty sure the University of Minnesota Duluth would also count in there, and same as the University of Minnesota Rochester, would not have enough money from the state grant award to cover those costs or have the same costs as they did of last year. This is really concerning for University of Minnesota students. You know, we also, like other public universities, have needy students who come from all different economic backgrounds, and we really need to make sure that we continue this bipartisan approach that Congress passed of where we judge cost of attendance by the actual cost of attendance of attending a place of higher education, not just the tuition and fees at a public institution. Right now, students at the University of Minnesota are registering for classes, signing their leases for next year, preparing for finals, setting their alarms for when the student season tickets for the Gopher football will be dropped, running for leadership positions for their student groups, and applying for internships and fellowship opportunities across the state and country. However, if passed, they will be notified that their financial aid package they've relied on has been pulled from under them. The reality of these changes will be that students will have to make a difficult choice, either to take extra credits, sacrificing their GPA so they can graduate early, or they will start their transfer application outside of this state to see if other states better meet their needs. They may take on another job to cover the added costs, or more likely, they will just drop out of higher education altogether and not completing their degree. According to a study from the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, even a small decrease in a student's financial aid award, which is around $1,000, will cause them to drop out at a 2.5% higher rate than their peers who did not have their aid cut. This committee's actions today and the coming months will determine whether we keep our North Star Promise for affordable higher education or gut it, whether we protect our most vulnerable students or let the floor drop from under them, whether we continue with our progress or regress back to the old way we thought about student aid. Members, please protect the programs we rely on. Members, protect North Star Promise and fund fully the state grant program. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to testify? Thank you. Please come to the witness table and state your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. For the record, my name is Nate Peterson, and I serve as the Executive Director of Student Finance at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. Today, I'm representing the University of Minnesota system, including the Crookston, Duluth, Morris, Rochester, and Twin Cities campuses. The proposal before the committee results in state grant reductions for $2,500 to $3,000 for students at the University of Minnesota, students who all have adjusted gross incomes under $100,000. Specifically, regarding changing tuition caps, this is a temporary and challenging solution. Students and families still have to pay the published tuition rates, even if the tuition and fee rate is not recognized in law for purposes of the Minnesota state grant. The shift will burden the paying from the state to the students and their families. Over time, the state grant program would see reduced purchasing power. We see this now with Pell Grants already. As Pell Grants have not kept up with inflation, their impact has resulted in a shrinking share of college cost coverage over time. In the absence of new funds, we would suggest the legislature consider reducing awards for all students in a broad manner that is sustained through the next biennium. First, the legislature could consider increasing the assigned student responsibility from 50% to 55% to 60%. This change acknowledges that the program has constrained resources, but maintains the state's commitment to funding the same proportion of costs at the institution of the student's choosing. We still believe that using the rationing parameters enacted in law in 2025 would be an acceptable way of doing this. Rationing protects the lowest income students first and reduces awards proportional to income and institutional cost. This method is well thought out and best ensures affordability with consensus on other options cannot be achieved. We would also encourage the legislature to not make any financial aid changes to programs for summer 2026, as students are already enrolled for that term under the current rules and regulations. Changing financial aid for summer 2026 or earlier terms could leave students with large unpaid balances and no way to pay them prior to the fall 2026 term. This could risk cancellation of future term registration depending on institution. The University of Minnesota would welcome a seat at the table to work hand in hand with the legislature and our OHE colleagues to develop a solution focusing on stability for the Minnesota State Grant Program and ensuring that we all maintain affordability for our low and moderate income students. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next testifier. Please state your name for the record, and you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Paul Sirkvenik, and I serve as the president of the Minnesota Private College Council. I want to say generally I share the perspectives just shared with you from the University of Minnesota, and I want to point out that our state has codified 5 objectives for the state's investment in higher education. One of those 5 objectives is to foster student success by enabling and encouraging students to choose institutions and programs that are best suited for their talents and abilities, and to provide an educational climate that supports students in pursuing their goals and aspirations. The state grant is the tool by which this objective is achieved for lower income students. But the state grant can only achieve this objective if the tuition maximum fully takes into account actual tuition up to the highest public institution tuition, so that access to all institutions is possible for students with limited financial resources. The proposal in this bill to establish a tuition maximum below the highest public 4-year tuition is deeply concerning because it means lower income students will not have the financial aid resources to be able to enroll in the institutions and programs that are best suited for their talents and abilities and will help them achieve their goals and aspirations. For this reason, we encourage you to pursue solutions to the state grant shortfall that are not based on policy changes targeted at a subset of institutions. The most important of these solutions is to make a meaningful investment of new funds in the program, and then only to the minimum degree necessary to employ an approach to rationing that is first temporary and second affects every student equitably and without regard to the institutions they seek to attend. We look forward to working with committee members to achieve this end. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public testifiers? Seeing none, we can move to member discussion. Is there any discussion of HF 4252 as amended by the D? Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as was testified to just now, I do have real concerns about the tuition cap changing from the tuition at the U of M in the Twin Cities to the average of all public institutions. I think there are going to be some not great, inevitable outcomes to that. And it's going to obviously result in reduced state grants for students across the state, but it could also change, it could also incentivize student enrollment to shift from the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities here to other schools in the system. And while I don't think that is the intention, we have to be careful about what we're incentivizing. We want students to have the full range of options to them that they've enjoyed since the inception of the state grant, and I think this is not a great move.
Thank you, Chair Scott. Any other discussion? Chair Claiborne.
Thank you. I'm wondering, Mr. Hopkins, can you please tell me where in the bill, in the DE, that line is?
Mr. Hopkins.
Madam Chair, Representative Cleaborn, that change is at page 41, beginning on line 6 and extending onto line 11 of page 41.
Thank you. Chair Claiborne.
Thank you. May I continue, Chair?
Yes, Chair Claiborne.
Okay, I agree with you, Representative Scott, that this is it's much better to leave this in the hands of OHE that can do things a bit more equitably. I know this was negotiated, but it's very problematic for me. That's really that's all I have to say. It's very problematic for me.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Vice Chair Coulter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I agree, actually, that the tuition cap is not, I think, what anybody would prefer to do here. And I think we all offered amendments about what we would prefer to be doing. And, you know, we are where we are. And I think it is temporary. We are going to have to fix the state grant. And I think the time to do that is in the budget year. And I think we will continue to have conversations. This is not, I think, the bill any of us, certainly not the bill I wanted to be passing out of committee today. And I think, you know, as I said once, our students are our most important constituency. And my hope is that moving forward, we can do better for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Rarick.
Thank you. Yeah, so again, we had robust negotiations to try to come to something that we could all agree on. That was the goal, right? So we all wanted to agree on things. And this is the only piece out of many, many, many pieces. I brought, as I always do, a dozen or more options. I only showed you a few in our amendments. This is the only thing that we could get agreement on across the aisle. I think that we absolutely need to fix the structural imbalance now, as opposed to the next session, because we have a massive hole. And as you just heard from the University of Minnesota student, any institution that has tuition above that demarcation line, those students are going to be impacted. The U, the privates, some of them in states, universities, they're going to be impacted. So what I was trying to do with a dozen or so options is to get at different pieces of this imbalance. But the only piece that I could get agreement on across the aisle was this piece. And I'm not sure exactly why this is the only thing that was agreed upon. I agree with you. This is problematic. They're all going to be a challenge. All of the different things that we need to do structurally to fix the imbalance, they are all going to affect somebody. You can't do it without affecting somebody. So we chose to affect the University of Minnesota and the private colleges and some of the higher paid min-state universities. That's who we're affecting, the students that choose to go there. Maybe they won't choose to go there, to the point of Chair Scott. Maybe they will just say, well, we're not going to go to the U then. I'm not quite sure, but that's where we are. We can certainly have more conversation as this bill moves forward, but I would implore the other side of the aisle to give some of the other options, about a dozen different options. Actually, it was more than that. It was 4 pages of options that I offered in suggestions and in cuts and reallocations and in policy changes and all kinds of things that we didn't get to hear here. But this is the only thing that we landed on that we could agree to. So unfortunately, this is where we are. I don't love this idea either. I like it more in a whole complex and a complement of ideas. right? So if we're going to do negative SAI, and we're going to do maybe a little structural change to North Star Promise, and we're going to do a little bit to the, the more expensive institutions, we could look at other things. I had multiple things on that list as a whole package. That was my hope. That's what we went into negotiations to talk about. This is what we came up with. So that's where we are. And Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you, but I'm disappointed as well that this is where we landed.
Thank you, Chair Rarick and Chair Cleaborn. Oh, and just one, just to comment on this, and then I'll turn to Co-Chair Wogamont. I agree. I didn't like this piece at all either, and I think hopefully we could find a group of us to work together before it gets to Ways and Means, and we could fix this, because I think it's the wrong direction. And the alternative is, if we don't do this, it would just, all the cuts would fall on rationing, which were the levers we agreed to last session. So just so members understand, that's the choice of this. Chair Cleaborn.
We are rationing. We are just rationing on some students more than others. And I think that hits the unfairness gene for me big time. And this is something where it was stated earlier, these are choices that we make to either advocate for more funding, pass more funding. I don't know how far the $60 million would have gone to ameliorate some of this issue, but you are picking winners and losers. And so we have to figure out a way to not, if we're going to treat all students equitably, we need to figure that out. But to say that just because you go to a four-year institution or you go to the University of Minnesota, you're going to carry a higher burden, that's not fair.
I agree. And we look forward to hopefully fixing this at the next step, because I couldn't agree more. Co-Chair Wogamont.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Robbins, and to all the members for not only the discussion today, but for all the hard work that has gone into this committee. We are in a unique situation that has been unique from other higher education committees, having to operate in a tie. And it hasn't been easy, and we do have some very stark disagreements, but I know that everyone from both sides has come forward to this committee ready to work hard and put forward that effort, and I just want to say thank you for that. I thought Vice Chair Coulter summed up my views on this bill and the negotiations and where we hope to go very perfectly. I do just want to mention, on a positive note, something that we've all been able to agree on is the section of this bill that creates a new statute denying student aid or grant program funds to individuals who commit fraud or submit materially misleading information. I'm really proud of the work that's been done on that, and I think is a positive step toward ensuring integrity in these precious taxpayer dollars that we fight so hard to get for our committee, and to be able to invest in real students who are coming to improve themselves rather than ghost students and fraudsters. So anyway, thank you very much, Chair Rarick. Thank you, Chair Robbins. Thank you, Vice Chair Coulter, and all the members of the committee. I urge a green vote on this and look forward to the continued work ahead as we move on to our final product. Thank you.
Thank you. So seeing no further discussion, Chair Wogamont renews his motion to refer HF 4252 as amended to Ways and Means. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. No. The bill will move on to Ways and Means.